That was one of the most brutal weeks I've had in my entire crypto life. I've been here since end of 2014, beginning of 2015, and I can tell you I haven't seen a week like the one we've seen today. I actually felt even worse than on the week of FTX. Now, what caused this? I guess by now everybody knows that the cause of this was the Mt. Gox resell, or the Mt. Gox distribution. Mt. Gox started to distribute some of their 141,000 Bitcoin. They have 141,000 Bitcoin, and that is ultimately the biggest distribution or the biggest liquidation event in Bitcoin's history. People are worried that these coins are going to hit the market. Despite all these coins on the market, I've got a few guests that are coming on today, and they are more bullish than they've ever been. And I need to find out why they are so bullish. So despite the fact that we've got 141,000 Bitcoin, the biggest Bitcoin distribution of all time coming out today, these guys are bullish. And today we're going to find out exactly why these guys are bullish. So let's get this show on the road. Let me know how you're feeling after this brutal week. I know it hasn't been easy, but as I said yesterday on yesterday's shows, and if you haven't watched yesterday's show, go and watch it. But there's a link below just to go and watch it. But it is one of the biggest capitulation events. And every cycle actually has one of these capitulation events, and then we actually go up. And to me, this felt like the bottom. It felt like the big capitulation. And now it's pretty much going up. And I guess that's one of the reasons why our guests are going to be bullish. But I won't answer for them. I'll actually leave it up to them. This show we're doing today is actually an emergency show. It's in place of, we were supposed to have the Banter yesterday, but because of the whole Mt. Gox FUD, we postponed the Banter, and so we decided to do the Banter today. And remember that our Banters are always sponsored by NordVPN. Guys, you can lose money on the markets. You can lose money by doing bad trades. The one place it's inexcusable to lose money is to lose money through a hack, or giving it unnecessarily to a government, or giving your details to hackers. And the easiest way to protect yourself is to use a VPN. Now you can see when you're surfing without a VPN, you are exposing your IP address, which exposes where you are, which internet service provider you're using. It's basically an easy way for governments and hackers to get into your system. Now, if you use the link below and you take a VPN, you get not only do you get a VPN, but you also get a free eSIM that you can use. If you're traveling, you can use the eSIM from the service that's called 𝗓𝗓𝗓. So if you buy this, you actually get a free eSIM card service. If you want to sign up, there's a link here. Sign up here. Also get threat protection to protect you from those malicious wallets and those malicious websites that will land up stealing your crypto. Remember, when you do that, you also support our channel and you take safety seriously. And if you want to be in crypto, trust me, you want to be taking safety seriously. So listen, without further ado, as I said, it's been the roughest week in the whole world. Let's like this video if you enjoyed this content. Subscribe to our channel if you're not already. Subscribe to our channel. Let's get this show on the road. I did say this week that this is one of the hardest and craziest weeks that I've ever seen in crypto. But my next guest is very cool and very calm and very collected, and actually very bullish. And I need to understand why. So I want to bring in Yat. Have you been watching what's been going on in the markets? Why do you look so relaxed? It's like that meme. It's like that meme, you know. It's like that meme of everything breaking down, and the guy's like,
"There we go." That's how I'm feeling about the world right now. Yeah. So look, I mean, I think really when you think about it, you know, outside the fact that I'm in Kyoto, so I'm totally feeling zen for a bunch of reasons. I think the other thing really, if you think about it, is that, you know, we've seen this cycle so many times before, right? I think I said this on the show before, that crypto cycles are accelerated, meaning that when we think of something that happens in annual or even sort of biannual periods, crypto does that literally on every 1 or 2 or 3 months, right? So I would argue that we're on our third moving on to our fourth cycle in many ways. And there's many macro factors behind that. But, you know, it's easy to point to all the things that aren't working. But, you know, there's some ecosystems that are generally doing very well. For instance, if you look at one of our earliest things that we backed last year was Ton, basically the Telegram-backed ecosystem, if you would call it that. And that's doing really well. I mean, you know, for anyone who got into that ecosystem, they're up, I don't know, what is it, 700, 800%, depending what day you're looking at as an example. And they're basically onboarding, you know, the next hundreds of millions of users. We're definitely
going to talk a lot about Ton. It's actually one of the things that I've prepared to talk about, because I really wanted to get your opinion, because I got into Ton because you told me to get into Ton. About a year and a half ago, you were here. And I think it was, I don't remember exact dates, but you told me to get into Ton. I then told our community to get into Ton. And I mean, we did, you know, and we've been in for a long time. The way I see the market, though, there's like, for me, 3 sectors in the market. There's Bitcoin, there's ETH, and there's altcoins. And
correct. Okay.
So for me, like the way I analyze the market, when a market breaks down, the first thing I do is I analyze, is the market actually broken? And with Bitcoin, I struggle to see how the market's broken. We've got institutional money coming in. We've got interest rates coming down. I just don't see how Bitcoin's broken. So I'm not really worried about Bitcoin. When I look at ETH,
Bitcoin's not broken. Yeah, and maybe I just want to add some other things, is that, there's a couple of things that have happened in the cycle, right? I mean, one of them, first of all, there's a little bit of a more systemic issue around miners basically having to sell more Bitcoin because of the fact that the halving has affected their income. That's kind of one level at these pricing levels. But then I think the second aspect, which is probably even bigger, is that Mt. Gox has been starting to pay out people in Bitcoin, actually, as an example, right? So you see people who actually in many cases have written off essentially their potential return of capital, and now they're getting back Bitcoin, and there's that. And then there's what I think also market jitters. Outside of the whole summer thing, you've seen basically government-owned wallets moving large amounts of Bitcoins. Everyone's like, oh, what's happening here? And I think our industry is somewhat conspiracy prone as well, and so there's a lot of fears around that. But I'm not too worried about it. Again, all I say is take a look what it was like 1 year ago, or even 2 years ago, and tell me how you feel about the space right now. So we're much better. But
it's so funny. It's so funny because I prepare slides before the show, not knowing if I'm going to use them or not. But also trying to anticipate more or less what my guests are going to be talking about. And it's so funny because literally, I kind of thought that you would see all the government selling and the minor capitulation. And then, we've been here before, and here's the charts of the previous bull markets. And it's almost like for us that have been here, it's normal. For us that have been here, this is normal. So I say, look, Bitcoin's not broken. ETH, the way I see ETH is probably the biggest opportunity pot out there. Why? It hasn't got the ETF yet. The world is moving to ETH ETF. Even if the flow of money is 80% Bitcoin, 20% ETH, that's going to mean huge inflows coming into ETH. Also, there's real world asset tokenization, which is all the big institutions are starting to or TradFi starting to talk about that, and that's all going to be on ETH. So ETH is not broken, Bitcoin's not broken. But then I go into the altcoin market, and I get haunted by the high valuation, high FOMO, high FDV, low token flow tokens, which have basically caused, if you want to say, a kind of leverage, right? Like you want to say, like you were getting into chains that have got absolutely no users at valuations of $20 billion. And the reason why the average investor was getting into those chains at $20 billion is because so much hype was created. And the only way that they could get in was at $20 billion valuation, because that's when it came onto the market. And you had a massive leveraged event, if you want to call it that.
Well, I don't know it's so much leverage in the same way that it would happen with Bitcoin, because in Bitcoin, you can actually leverage it, right? So as a result of that, when something happens with the Bitcoin price, there's actually a cascading. But for the vast majority of altcoins, there is no potential to leverage. Very few people will buy them or sort of have a market for that on that level. So it really is essentially effectively what the spot price and the liquidity is in the market. But I would also say one thing, when we look at a token, and this is true for L1, L2s, like the main ones, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or even for the altcoins in the space, what is a token in its essence? And a token really, in our view, represents network effects, right? In other words, for the first time when you own a token, you own something that has both the utility, the financial utility combined into this powerful thing where you can own a piece of the network for the very first time, right? It's not like a share where you own equity. It's a part of the network effect, right? You don't buy Ethereum tokens, or for that matter, TON tokens or Bitcoin, because you're thinking it's going to give you an outsized yield or return, or it has a PE ratio. That's not how it works. What you're really buying is a network effect. And so when you look at many of the altcoins, they were basically trumpeting the potential of the network effects. So people were buying the potential of something. But it's a little bit like buying into a startup that has hype, 5 years before its execution. It's kind of like, it could become the next Facebook, right? But, for the time being, many people forget that it took $1.3 billion in 6 years for Facebook to actually become profitable as a business and sustainable, for example, right? And there's many stories about that in the startup world. And I think altcoins are kind of representation of those startup type of token ecosystems. Some of them have great potential and people still believe and follow those. Some of them essentially have promised a lot, but they've under-delivered. And as time goes on, as you would see from any normal sort of support base, they go, wait, you made this promise, you failed. You made that promise, you failed. Why should we then be surprised that the token prices are collapsing? So you kind of see sort of a mixture of that. But of course, Bitcoin is kind of still the gold standard in the Web3 world. So if Bitcoin has a macro impact, then generally speaking, you'll see a broader impact in altcoins as well. But generally speaking, again, you're buying into the value of these network effects. So to me, I see this as an opportunity for those ecosystems that actually have users that have true network effects. Remember, many of those, let's call them altcoin ecosystems, were essentially botting their network effects, right? They were using bots to open wallets. They're using fake accounts, all these things to also create the illusion of a network effect, when in fact it wasn't really there, right? But we're getting better at this.
They were doing airdrops. They were doing airdrops, which encourage users to open the same user to open 600,000 wallets, and seemed like he was 600,000 users on the network.
Yes, they were one-off. And I think, again, it's kind of like we're also getting better at airdrops. The first generation of airdrops just give everyone who basically just shows up. Second generation airdrop shows them TVL, right? And then they move their money out after they made the token. Third generation of airdrops, well, you prove that you're human, for instance, right? And then outside of proving that you're human, do something that adds value to the network. And so we're getting an evolution of that over time. For instance, what's happening in gaming today as well, where if you want to actually earn an airdrop, as an example, you actually need to do something and play a game and actually create value, as opposed to just showing up, right? So these are parts of that evolution. By the way, that's how the advertising industry was 20 years ago. The initial advertising industry was really primitive, to the point where today it's become much more sophisticated. We're kind of going through those same cycles. So again, I see it purely just as a natural maturation of the market. And what we're experiencing now is volatility. And we are playing a capitalist game here. And capitalism is by its very nature volatile. That's both the opportunity and the risk of the space. So again, I'm not worried about this. I don't think altcoins are broken. I think they're simply reflecting the true state of capitalism as we have right now, right? In terms of those that work and those that do not work.
I think few people have the clarity of thought that you have to understand that we're investing in network effects. And I think very, very, very few people understand that this is the first time it's actually not the first time, it's the second time. I'll actually talk you through what the first time was, which I learned, but it's the second time in the history of the world that humans have been able to participate in a network effect, and actually by participating actually add value to the network. Because
Absolutely.
In Web 2, when the concept of network effect started, the value capture of the network was captured by the shareholders, which was Facebook,
and actually by the platform primarily, right?
Yes,
so,
by the platform.
Yeah.
This version, which is the second version of participation in network effects, is the second time. The first time, actually, I was having a conversation and someone actually pointed out to me, and I was trying to argue against it, but rightly so, was gold. And the reason why gold was actually a user participation network effect was because when people bought gold jewelry to flaunt how rich they were becoming richer because they were making gold more scarce. So there are a lot of similarities between Bitcoin and gold. Bitcoin, the more you use Bitcoin, the more merchants accept Bitcoin, the more you add value to the network. Gold, the more fashionable gold became, the more people wore it, the more semi-scarce asset they were eliminating because of the use case, therefore driving up the value of the thing. So, I mean...
Well, let me add one more compound point to this. So I agree with you, but let me add one more point on this when we talk about network effects. But what is a network effect in the human context? It's actually a social network, right? In other words, when we think about the context of our value, there's some people that we value more in our network because maybe they have more influence, or they have more capital, or they're more power. They represent maybe more of a super node in that structure, but nevertheless, they're part of the social network. And to your point about gold, actually, I would argue that money is ultimately the biggest social network in the world. It's actually the one that's enabled us to actually do transactions with strangers around the world to create a base layer of that, right? So in that sense, actually, it's a more powerful sort of this.
The problem is money wasn't scarce. The problem is that money was never scarce because money was always printed.
Yes. It wasn't designed for that, but it was designed to create a social network effect in the sense that, through money, we can now do commerce together. And so now we've created another network effect, but you don't own the value of that network effect in the same way, at least not in recent times. I mean, remember, money was at one point part of the gold standard, right? So it was tied to it, right? I mean, it was really only pre-Nixon that essentially the gold standard in America was abandoned. And many of the things that we see today in sort of money was changed. I mean, I'm currently in Japan, for instance, right? And they just recently started to introduce inflation. I mean, I can literally go to a vending machine and I can pay for a soft drink the same amount of money that in yen anyway, that it cost a person 20 or 30 years ago, right? I mean, that's kind of thing doesn't happen anywhere else around the world anymore, but that's an example of what some places around have done to try to sort of at least emulate this sort of element of the store of value, which originally money was a function of. But anyway, enough of that. My point is that you're owning a network effect now in Web3, as we're discussing, and the value capture of that network effect and your ability to contribute to the network effect, or it's just simply to own a piece of it. That's what Web3 is all about. And I think I'd say one other thing, which is that this is really the framework which we believe you could actually truly create a property-owning democracy, which is all what we're trying to build for.
All right. So, I mean, when you look at it through those eyes, I feel much more relaxed. When you look at it as investing in networks, and we know the power of networks, I feel much more relaxed. When we look at it in terms of we've been here for multiple cycles, I feel much more relaxed. I want to get into a different discussion, a deeper discussion. And I think for this discussion, I actually want to bring on two of our friends. I want to bring on 𝗓𝗓 the Love Muscle. And I want to bring on the CEO of one of the new and probably most exciting groups in your world, and we'll get into that. So Tyler, welcome, 𝗓𝗓 the Love Muscle. I took him to one Grand Prix, and we made him a Ferrari fan. It looks like.
Yeah, that's how it goes. They had the coolest shirt, so I chose Ferrari.
Amazing, guys. The reason why I want you guys here is because I want to talk about three big narratives. I want to talk about meme coins, gaming, and NFTs. And usually I get Yat on when we talk about gaming and when we talk about metaverse and when we talk about NFTs. But I really want to try to understand, because Yat, you're a big fan of culture. You spoke about culture. You spoke about social. I want to understand how meme coins, what your view is on the current meme coin craze, and whether it is a culture game.
So first of all, yes, I do think it's a culture game. But I think, like all elements of any game, not all of them will survive in the same way that fashion is a culture game, right? Most people don't remember, or may not even sort of, recall that there were thousands and thousands of fashion brands previously vying for essentially the crown, as it were, right? Before we had LVMH and before we had, or, at the time when some of the brands like Gucci or Hermes were all rising, all of these other sort of, fashion brands that we forgot or have sort of gone by the wayside, they're essentially representation of that culture of its time. But I think what's happening, when we take the reference of NFTs, is that the narratives around essentially this sort of cultural capital has been somewhat taken over by meme coins. But one major difference between them, which is that meme coins are much more tied towards economic capital. So it's mostly around, making money. Whereas essentially when you go into NFTs, we go into cultural capital, which is the next evolution, right? It's really about status as a social and the social good and the social reputation around it, as we do in the physical world. Like, for instance, that Ferrari shirt that, 𝗓𝗓 is wearing right now. I mean, you're part of that network. You're representing something. You think it's cool. You're broadcasting a social status. And there's probably only a few places in the world where you can buy that Ferrari shirt, which is why it's valuable to you, not necessarily as a money sense, but as a cultural statement, right? And then we get into further evolution of that, which goes beyond just the cultural capital. But my point is that that's kind of where we are right now. And also, I think meme coins, why I say it's cultural, is because it's a reflection of the time. I mean, let's face it, the world is broadly fucked, right? I mean, if you take a look at, for instance, the inequity that's happening in the world, 1% getting richer, the 90%, the rest of the world getting poorer. I mean, we're talking like 2/3 of the new wealth that's generated over the last 3 years have gone to the 1%, and it's continued to accumulate this way. So what is meme coins? Meme coins is basically an answer to that. I'm not saying it's the best answer, but it's the same reason why people started looking at Bitcoin in the early days. People built on Bitcoin because they said, you know what? We don't like the money printer going, like, screw that type of stuff. We're going to do our own version of that. That was the revolt of its time, right? Now we have a different problem. The problem is that, young people can't afford their homes. They can't buy a house. There's inequity. There's homeless people on the street, right? And you see the generations of their parents, their children doing worse than their parents. That's not something that, at least in the Western world, they've experienced. And you can kind of see that also in the politics, when you look at, right-wing parties growing and everything. I think it's all around the lens of the growing inequity, and meme coins is a reflection of that. So it's cultural in that context, but there's a reason behind that, right? So it's not the same as NFTs. They are different. They're still cultural in context, but one is a reflection of the time that we're in, and the other one, I think, is more enduring, which is our social status.
Look, for me, when I looked at NFTs versus meme coins, the one thing that struck me was NFTs are exclusive, meme coins are inclusive. So, I mean, like when I look at an NFT,
I don't agree with that.
well, let me break down the thesis. So, for me, and that's why I think that NFTs are doing so badly in a time when meme coins are doing so well. Why? Because I did a poll on my Twitter and I said, what community do you feel more connected to? Your NFT community or your meme coin community? And I think 80% of people said they feel closer to the people or they feel more connected with the people in their meme coin community. And when I dug into it, what I realized was that to be a part of a group, an NFT culture movement, you had to have enough money to buy the NFT. You had to have arrived early enough to buy the NFT. If it was a punk or an ape, I mean, you had to have serious money. You had to have, what's the floor price today on punks? I mean, a couple of hundred ETH, whatever it is. And to me, what I realized was that with a meme coin, if I want to be part of the 𝗏𝗏𝗡 community, I can spend less than 1 cent on a single token, and I feel connected to the community. And if I want to elevate my status in the community, I just buy more and more and more, right? And then I can become a 𝗏𝗏𝗡 whale, and then maybe I've got more status in the community because my wallet is labeled as a whale wallet. So I guess that's when I realized that meme coins were more inclusive than NFTs, which became exclusive. And one of the things that I hated about NFTs was the fact that I didn't feel rich enough to buy it. Like sometimes I remember when Hustle told me to buy a 𝗦𝗔𝗙𝗘𝗣 NFT, and I kind of said to him, Hustle, how much is this 𝗦𝗔𝗙𝗘𝗣 NFT going to cost me? And he told me the amount. I was like, are you fucking out of your mind? Like, I'm not going to pay that amount of money to buy a 𝗦𝗔𝗙𝗣 NFT. It would have been a great investment if I had done it, because all the deals that apparently you guys do in that 𝗦𝗔𝗙𝗣 club are amazing. But I just feel that meme coins are much more inclusive. Hustle, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think NFT communities, they're very tight-knit if you're inside, but they are harder to get into because they have that floor price where, like you said, if you get into a meme coin, you're already a part of the culture. You can become part of the crypto Twitter movement behind any of these given meme coins. It's definitely a lot more accessible, but maybe, the NFT stuff, there's only last cycle, I feel like meme coins and NFTs, I've kind of flip-flopped now. Last cycle, it was NFTs. This cycle, it's meme coins. And there are still a few, really good NFT collections kind of out there. 𝗓𝗔𝗄𝗎's among one of the best ones, but there's not as many to choose from now. Whereas meme coins, there's a lot of thriving meme coin communities. Will it end up like NFTs where it kind of dies off eventually? Maybe. Yeah. But as of now, it's definitely the main character.
But Hustle, do you remember what these NFT prices were when they sold? They were in many cases free to maybe $50 to $100. The Bored Apes did not cost a lot of money. CryptoPunks were actually free to mint, right? I mean, for Mocaverse, which I think has a floor price of 3.5 to 4 ETH, for instance, that was effectively a free mint, a year plus ago, and so I guess they share similarly in the sense that both of them start with a low. The entry point for someone later might be different. That is true. But for the people that have started off who followed the community and built value into the network, again, into that network effect, right? They actually got the benefit of being there relatively early, right? And I think one thing that has happened, and I do agree with you on one thing, which is that some of the NFT collections have focused too much on the economic side of the capital as opposed to the cultural side of the capital, right? You can see some of the projects that have gone off the wayside. When you focus too much on the economic capital, you're actually bringing in people who only care about one thing. How much airdrop do you get? And how much value do you generate? And once that value goes away, actually, they move on to the next thing. So it becomes almost parasitic in nature because it doesn't have that cultural sort of context, right? It's really more closer to kind of objectified capital, right? It's a status, but it's something that you really only value because of its worth in money, right?
Okay.
But when you look at the real world, your reputation matters more, and that's I think what NFTs represent stronger than meme coins over time.
So Tyler, I want your view here. Do NFTs come back? And if they come back, what is the catalyst that brings NFTs back? Because right now, you can't sell an NFT. You could not convince me to buy an NFT today. All my NFTs that I actually landed up buying are completely underwater. Some of them are, I think,
Did you buy Mocaverse?
I didn't buy Mocaverse. I should have bought, and I actually, in the last part of the show, I do want to talk about Mocaverse because I really want to understand exactly what you guys are building. I know it's something absolutely amazing. But I mean, let's talk about broadly NFTs. I guess we saw Generation 1, we saw V1. Does V1 ever come back? Do dogs come back and punks come back and apes come back and do all of these things come back?
Yeah, so maybe let me ask you this question. When you do the survey and the poll with your community, when was it?
Month and a half ago. Peak meme coin cycle. Peak meme coin mania.
Exactly. So how would that poll be, you think, if you ask them the question in 2021?
Okay, well,
absolutely, they would say NFT, right?
Yes.
I mean, like price action and price going up is the best marketing tool out of everything in crypto, including NFT and meme coins, right? I do believe there is a 2x2 matrix and chart in terms of NFT and meme coin. One dimension is basically distribution, right? Meme coin apparently having a higher distribution because it's more fractionalized whatsoever. Another part is the representation of culture and the sense of belonging. I strongly believe that in NFT as way stronger sense of belonging, in the sense that I have all bunch of holders actually becoming founders, asking me for advice, and also for me as well. Like I need a lot of help from our holders to actually build this community together. They introduce different projects, they introduce different talent for me to hire, and this is the network effect that we're talking about. And I believe you can get a lot of those from the meme coin community, but then the sense of belonging and the store of culture that Jan has been talking about for NFT is way less. But it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, right? Because there's always a balance between distribution and culture.
And so one thing also you have to consider, like we always look at things in economic frameworks of the real world, like how does a country work and how does an economy and a GDP work? Well, what do we spend most of our money when we actually have generated wealth? We spend them on status goods, real estate we want to live in, Ferraris that we want to own, or shirts of that matter, right? Or Birkenbacks or Gucci's or Rolexes. Like we don't buy them to tell the time or store stuff in it. We do it because we want to actually represent something about us. So what will happen is that, in some ways I would say that NFTs are mispriced because of the market dynamics at the moment, really coming from still, a little bit of a shockwave from, 22, 23, right? Some of them still haven't recovered, even in the regular token prices. I mean, not all tokens, that were really successful in 21, 22 have recovered, from, let's not even talk peak prices, but generally sort of the prices we think are natural for that, right? And I think NFTs are somewhat the same, but what will happen is because we think NFTs are representations of, the culture of their moment in time, people will want them when they've generated wealth from it. In other words, if someone, makes a lot of money in meme coins and they want to stand out, do you think they want to buy more meme coins? No, they're going to want to have an NFT. They want to have a Bored Ape, or they want to, if they can afford that CryptoPunk, or they want to get a Pudgy Penguin or Mocaverse, that, join that community, move up that ladder in terms of their, where their cultural capital sits. That's actually what we do in the real world. That's what they'll do as well.
Would you,
in the physical world, right?
With what you're saying now, would you be buying some of the old NFTs? When I say the old NFTs, apes, punks, Pudgy Penguins, etc. So would you be sweeping floor prices now?
I just swept the floor of 10 apes, maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or something. And, so yes, I put my money where my mouth is.
One thing about you, and I've known you for a couple of years now, and I always say two things about you. The first thing is you're probably the coolest cat in the whole fucking world. You're always cool. And the second cat is you have fucking balls of steel, my friend. You have balls of steel. I've never seen anything like it. To be picking up apes now, you got to have balls of steel. I mean, so you say you still believe, I'll tell you why I said, usually in technology, V1 fails and V2 and V3 are the ones that land up disrupting the market. And if you want to bring it back down to Web 2, like AOL failed, AOL, America Online failed, and you can even argue that Yahoo failed, and it was the Googles that actually, like the generation 3 that actually succeeded, right? I guess that, the question is, should I be waiting for an innovation in NFTs to get back into the NFT market? Or should I maybe be looking for bargains in the previous NFT market to actually say, these NFTs can actually make a comeback? I want to hear all your views. Yeah, I want to hear your view here. Hassel and Tyler, I want to hear your view.
Yeah, so I'll start off first. First of all, I think they'll make a comeback because, of course, not all NFT collections. It just depends on the teams and backgrounds and the history and the legacy attached to it. But, some of the OG ones, I think they have a status of a moment that matters in the history of their time. Right. So, when people think about things like expensive violins, like a Strad, those were not super expensive 200 years ago, right? But, today they're amongst the most expensive instruments in the world. Or when you think about Renaissance art, yes, they were expensive, but they were nothing compared to the prices they are today, right? So people will want certain things, from those moments. Like why, like my parents might be collecting, I don't know, for instance, let's call it Picassos, right? But, the next generation will collect Warhols. and a collection after that, Banksy's, right? What are they, right? It's not that they speak to them. They speak to people from that generation where they see value in that as they grow. And these are OG assets, right? So I think that's going to be part of that. But the second thing, look, the reason I picked up the apes wasn't just because I thought they were great investments, relatively speaking. I also picked them up because, it was a way of giving back to the community, right? And I think this is what it means to sort of participate in the shared network of Web3. The goodwill that you build up from the community when you come and support a network actually comes back to you in other things. Because actually, when you think about what's cultural capital, which is what NFTs represent, actually, they're layers of reputation, right? Where you live is a reputation. What you own is a reputation. You're building up your social reputation, which is kind of what we want to do with Mocaverse, which Tyler, we'll talk about later, I guess. And this is what we're building up to. So, me buying stuff isn't even about whether obviously I hope it does well, but a lot of it has to simply do with the fact, look, I've done well in the Web3 space and I'm grateful for it. But I also have to give back to build the space, right? And I think if we all start thinking about it in this way, the ecosystem would be much better as a result, right? Think about all the Web3 people that actually have made money. What actually happens is they often put it back into the ecosystem, which is why the system flows the way that it does, right? This is the problem we had in 2017, 2018. People made money and they just took it out, right? And that didn't work, right? It was extractive as hell. And so I think we need to bring back that ethos of thinking. So if I have one gripe on meme coins, broadly speaking, which is they do bring people in, but if it brings just the kind of people who are only thinking about extracting, then they're not building the ecosystem, right? And that's not true for everyone, right? This is not a blanket statement, but there are people still in the space that are really just thinking about essentially sort of taking money out and just doing something else, right? And I think we just need to be better at that. And again, as I said earlier, right? If the people, the meme coin cycle is also not doing as well as it did basically, start of the year. So just think about that. When the meme coins did well, NFTs actually were trading over $1.5 billion a month, right? And prices were up. Again, it's the same thing. If people make money in meme coins, they want to elevate the status. They're going to buy NFTs. So generally speaking, everything we do in the world is broadly going into cultural capital in the long run. So I think NFTs are frankly the biggest opportunity for us. Whether it's in gaming, whether it's in cultural assets, doesn't really matter.
Okay, 𝗏𝗧, what do you think? Would you be sweeping up some ape floor prices, punk floor prices at the moment? Have you got balls?
I don't know about 10 of them, but the one thing I'll say is last year, I would just liken it to the gaming market. It really became a time where we were waiting on a product that never came. And then finally, we had a span of 4 months with 3 different big innovations that came through the door, with Parallel coming to market, with Mavia coming to market, as well as Big Time coming to market. Those 3 games actually set off the gaming altcoin sector when a lot of people were screaming. Yeah, and Pixels as well. And people were screaming that gaming was dead. And it's the same kind of thing here. It's all about just the rotation of capital. And I do think as people do start to cash out on their meme coins, what do they want? They want maybe a pudgy profile picture. They want a Moca. They want an ape, because it is kind of that Rolex, like Yacht was mentioning, in Web3. So I think it's just a sentiment game. If you're planting seeds there, you definitely have to have those balls of steel to be able to wait a little bit. But I do think, with the appreciation of the market and where we could see ETH go, and then I think the sentiment does flow back into NFTs at some point, I think it's a good play. And you would never want to go with the herd, right? I'm into meme coins, but at the same time, I think you have to go look at other things in other sectors. You got to front run those narratives. And I think that's exactly what Yacht's talking about.
Okay, Tyler, what do you think? Are you sweeping floors or not?
Oh, I've always been sweeping floors, and most of the time just helping my friends. Hey, Tyler, can you help me sweep 10 of them? Sure. And I have a wallet that I never sell, so I'm always sweeping. And I think the more important factor in crypto and in everyone's psychology is really finding the gem, right? I think we all enjoy the feeling of finding the gem and being right together with the community. And you have that WAGMI vibe together. If we all don't list, if we all don't sell and keep buying, price would go up. I think that is part of the culture. Sometimes
sounds like Bitcoin to me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So sometimes you join for the money and then you stay for the culture, right? Like there was people talk about you join for the tech, you stay for the money, but I don't think that's true. Like you really join for the money and then you stay for the culture. The community that I love the most was a coin that was $3,000 and now is like $2 right now. And I still love the community. And the reason being,
what coin is it? What coin is that?
I don't want to show the coin here, but it's like a sustainability type kind of coin, and like $3,000 to $2, I still love it. I'm still very engaged in that community. And the reason being that I really believe in that group of people. It's not even about the project anymore, right? Because the people who hold the token actually shape the culture together, and the culture is the people. So I think that would be represented not only in NFT, but also in meme coin or any kinds of assets. But I think one area that we haven't really tapped into yet is the different use cases of NFT. That doesn't only need to be PFP. It can be, for example, for Mocaverse, the representation of the digital identity is in the form of NFT. Reputation can be in the form of NFT, right? That is being attached to the ID itself, and you can query, you can attest on chain. And that
so
is
you know what? I was going to talk about Mocaverse at the end of the show, but I still want to talk because I still want to really get into Telegram, because Ton is something that I want to do. But maybe let's do Mocaverse now and actually jump into Ton afterwards. Because I really, I know you guys are hardcore gamers and hardcore metaverse people. When I look at Ton, it's probably the exact opposite of these hardcore. It's tap fucking games. All you do is tap, and it's become the most addictive thing in the world. And I really want to get your views. But let's talk about Mocaverse. So, yeah, you've been excited about this project for probably, I can't even remember all I remember is you telling me how excited you are about this project, What is this project? Why are you guys so excited about it? What is Mocaverse? What is the Moca network? Walk me through it. One of you just tell me what we're dealing with here.
Well, I mean, before I let Tyler sort of go through sort of the nitty gritty, because he's obviously sort of on the ground, on ground zero of all of this, Mocaverse is, one of the key projects, the key sort of thing that we're trying to push out for Animoca as this reputation layer, right? It's the way that we believe that we can actually share the network effects that Animoca has built with 500 portfolio companies, and obviously the space of the ecosystem that we have, where there are billions of dollars, in our token reserves. How do we find a way to share in the network effects of what we've built to that community? And that is the Mocaverse, right?
Okay, so just for people who don't know, Animoca has been investing in Web3 projects since. Let's just get some.
Basically late 2017, early 2018.
And how much money has Animoca invested in projects? Primarily when I look at Animoca, you guys are leaders in gaming. You guys are leaders in social gaming.
I mean, look, we do L1, L2s. We do everything that we think furthers the space of digital property rights, which is in Web3. And over 150 to 160 of them are in Web3 games, so we're known for that, right? I mean, we were seed investors in, OpenSea, even Magic Eden. That's obviously later. Obviously, Axie Infinity. Pixels, for instance, Sandbox. Dapper Labs, right? It's a whole range of companies. All these companies that we've been partnering and working with them since.
What's the value today? What's the value today of the Animoca portfolio?
Well, I mean, so the value of the portfolio is somewhere between 3 to 4 billion, right, and growing. I mean, obviously, it's one of those things that we actually also released our in a summary financial update just end of March, right, and we basically showed our liquid token positions that were somewhere in, I don't know, it was like combined probably like 2.7 billion. I don't really you can look it up. It's on our website, right. So and these are all things that we ended up sort of investing and growing into the space. But one of the things that we wanted to do was, how do we create a community around that can sort of share in the growth of that ecosystem? And that's basically what the Mocaverse is all about, right?
So what is?
Because you can think of it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Maybe before I pass it on to Tyler to go into the sort of the nuts and bolts of this, right? Let's put it this way. How can, and we've seen this with, for instance, the participation with Moca holders on things like Pixels or with Nine Chronicles, or for instance, right? Like, how do we create essentially one of the largest networks in the world that can benefit from everything that Animoca has invested in and continues to invest in? I mean, what I can tell you is that there's 500 investments that we can talk about today, but there's many, many more that we can't talk about today because we've made these investments and they still haven't been announced yet, right? And so, we hope to basically build a portfolio of thousands of companies. All of them are going to be, or most of them are going to be issuing tokens. What are the tokens for? As we said earlier, they're network effects. Who gets to build these network effects? Who gets to participate in them? Well, if we're just a VC, well, we wouldn't add enough value. But if we can build an army of millions of dedicated true builders in the space that can actually add value to the networks, and they get rewarded for that work from the very investments we've made, as a share of what we've helped contribute to help build those networks, essentially as a different kind of earning component, right? And that to me is what the Mocaverse will build. And you build reputation with us. The more reputation you build through these NFTs, the more value you generate. And I'll leave it at that because Tyler.
Tyler, how do you separate is the Moca coin in any way representative of the success of the investments that Animoca makes? I mean, is it a I mean, I hate using this word, but is it an equity type coin? Like what's the relationship?
Yeah, that's not the right way to describe that. Like we would definitely get into trouble if we say that, right?
That's why I hate saying it.
Yeah. So it's definitely not like a equity type, but you can almost imagine basically it's not as Yaa just mentioned as well. It's not like directly tied to the economic value of it, right? But then it's really that network effect that this token is able to represent the entire network. And the network that we're building, we're not building that on our own. It's basically the network of networks that has been building by all these projects that we invested in for the whole time, close to 500 companies. And if you think about it, the network is not just the companies that we invested in, but also our investors, and they bring on their portfolio, and the portfolio work with other partners, and those partners form this network together. And you mentioned about 𝗏𝗏 as well, right? Like 𝗏𝗏 is actually not completely disassociated from Mocaverse, because in a way that we're working very closely with the 𝗏𝗏 Foundation.
We're the biggest validator in 𝗏𝗏. So yeah.
So I mean, what's the value accrual for Moca coin? Like if I buy Moca coin, where am I getting the value accrual for? What am I using the coin for? What creates the scarcity of the coin? What creates the value of the coin?
It's a membership. So when you're part of the Moca community, you have the ability to partake in all the networks we're building. Basically, in the network effects we're building, which is all the token ecosystems that have essentially a way for you to have that. No, one of the problems that many projects have is they have one launch, one token, one ecosystem, and that makes sense, right? But what does Animoca have? It has 500. In the future, we'll have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 projects, most of them launching a token. How do you get to participate in that token? That basically help grow, if you help grow the network of those tokens, that's how you get benefits from it. I mean, I don't know how many millions of dollars of value we ended up dropping for people who helped build Pixels, for instance, in early start of the year, right? And in fact, we brought 1/3 of the traffic of Pixels, which today is the number one, taking 𝗏𝗏 aside, essentially number one EVM-based blockchain game on Ronin. Mocaverse drove 1/3 of the traffic, and the users were rewarded for that growth and that participation.
So it's the network. Right? So it's the network of networks. It's the network that gets you into other networks, basically.
Yes, and it's the networks of that. Every network, every investment that Animoca makes is a way that we want to help grow the network. Think about it from our lens. Do we want to just make an investment and just sit there, or do we want to actively help them build? How do we actually create more value for the ecosystems? Hey, look, we have an ecosystem of millions of people who are actually going to go participate in your network. And instead of essentially just, using, investor capital, that investor capital actually ends up sort of, using that as a reward for people to help grow the network, which in turn basically builds the value of our investment, right? So everyone essentially wins, which is very Web3, right? The value share is across entire sort of, users, creators, builders, and of course investors. That's what Web3 is all about.
Okay, so look, it sounds interesting. Tyler, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I think to add to that, right? Like what Mocaverse is building, Animoca has been building since 2017-18, investing in so many companies, and also advising a lot of projects as well. And I think the Mocaverse positioning and the role of Mocaverse is to finally have like a product layer to amplify that network effect of the entire portfolio and the ecosystem, right? Animoca has been building a lot of network effects from the past few years, actually through, for example, introducing through Zoom, connecting founders, connecting investors, and so on. But Mocaverse is the product layer that you can bootstrap all these network effects together, right? So connecting all these together with the interoperability that we're building with Realm Network, actually being able to drive users and projects across the entire ecosystem with the account system, with the interoperable ID, interoperable reputation, and interoperable point system that is able to cross-pollinate all these users, resources, assets across the entire ecosystem. And to your
I get
point
it.
on how
I get it,
how do you
and it's fucking genius. The penny just dropped. You have that penny drop moment. You're basically giving everybody an ID. You're basically creating an army with an identification, and you are then opening a world of opportunity to this army across your various networks, and you are rewarding the army for whatever they decide to do to add value to the network. Is that a good summary of what it is?
That is a good summary. And the other thing I would say, name me one ecosystem that has the breadth and size of the portfolio.
I just realized what you guys are building. It is the ultimate network. Wow. The penny just dropped to me. Initially, I must say I was skeptical. I couldn't see the value add on the token, but I see what you guys are building. When you start adding identity and you start adding a points accrual system, and then you start telling your users, look, we want to help this company in our network. Who wants to help them? You earn X amount of points by doing it, and you then engage an army of network builders to go and build networks so that the bigger network gets bigger. It's the network that combines all the networks that Animoca has invested in, and I think that's an absolute fucking powerhouse. That's genius.
And eventually what will happen, and this is, I think, will happen faster anyway, is that because of the network effects, third parties will want to build on top of it anyway, because it's basically belongs to the end user. Our network is open. So, all you got to do is own Moca.
It's a mobilization network. It's a mobilization network.
It is.
Ultimately, no one has created a mobilization network. You've created a mobilization network, which is you can literally mobilize your community who's trying to build a network to do things to help build your network, which is, I get it. Josh, do you get it? It's unbelievable, right? Insane. Even Josh here gets it, and Hardest gets it. Guys, I want to jump to Ton. Because we've got 5 minutes left, and I really want to talk about Ton. So look, when everyone spoke about gaming, like I always thought, like gaming, Fortnite, gaming, Call of Duty, that's gaming. And then the game that got the most traction was tap 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 tap. Like, I mean, tell me about what you see when you, and I want to talk to all of you. 𝗓𝗧, I want to talk to you because you're a gamer. Yat, I want to talk to you because you're just a visionary. What are you guys seeing in this Telegram ecosystem? Ton has been a very resilient coin in terms of users. I guess that there hasn't been many ecosystems that have done anything close to what Telegram has done. What's the magic recipe here? What is this thing?
So, maybe I'll start off with a few comments and then, we can kind of conversation around it. First, when we talk about sort of, tokens as a network effect representation, most tokens have stronger financial utility and growing application utility. But with Telegram and Ton, it's kind of the opposite, right? You have 900 million users on the Telegram side, and you have relatively low financial utility for the time being, but that's growing and accelerating, right? So it's actually a perfect match what the Web3 industry needs. And because of an open ecosystem, even as you grow your ecosystem on Telegram and using Ton, that doesn't mean you can't grow, your other blockchain project, because actually it can bleed into it, right? In other words, there's no restriction, right? It's not held back. What's the biggest problem that Web3 games or Web3 anything really has had over the last 4 or 5 years? It's distribution, right? And I think Bill Gates famously said, content is king. But then Justin Perelman from BuzzFeed actually had a counterquote to it and said, but distribution is the queen and she wears the pants. And that's what we see in the Web2 world, right? If it isn't for Apple, if it isn't for, HBO, if it isn't for Google, actually you can have the best game in the world. Nobody will know. And that's actually what's happening in Web3. But Telegram has now said, you know what, with Ton, we're going to open up this world where you can actually build freely on top without restrictions, and it could be a Web3 game. Apple allows us finally to do NFTs without utility. Like, what's the point of that, right? They're still basically sort of putting shackles on Web3 stuff. But basically what we see in Telegram, they're not doing that. And so, for instance, Gamey, the project I was talking to you about earlier, they have now 3 million DAU on actual games. So it's not just tap, 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 right? They've actually got games as an example, right? But I think, if you look at the early days of mobile gaming as well, what were the biggest games? They were Angry Birds, they were Mafia Wars, they were sort of, whatever it was like, Tap Tap Heroes, whatever. They were simple games at the time, and they mass onboarded people. And then from those groups of people, they started going to the next wave of gaming. You've got Hamster Combat. That's another example, right? They're mass onboarding. I think I told you that.
Yeah, look at these views. Just look at these views. 26 million views, 11 million views, 24 million views. This page is. I think this page is like a couple of weeks old. Look at these views.
But remember, do you remember when Facebook first launched? I think you're old enough to remember, right?
Yes, of course.
Just kidding.
I think I'm the oldest guy. I think I'm the oldest guy on this.
No. I'm older than you.
No way.
Sure I'm older
no way.
Yeah,
we can have a discussion afterwards, but I think I'm older than you.
What was your first computer?
Sinclair Spectrum, a ZX Spectrum.
Ooh, similar. Texas was TN99, so we might be the same.
Anyway,
my point here is that when you look at Facebook, right? Remember when Facebook had its open network effects and it didn't have its restrictions?
Yes.
What grew? Gaming. Remember Farmville? Remember Zynga?
Yes.
Right? These things were basically just growing like weed, right? You couldn't stop it until Facebook said, wait a second. But again, when it's built on chain, you can't block it, right? That's actually what you're seeing with Telegram.
You're 2 years older than me. You're 2 years older than me. According to Wikipedia, you're 2 years older than me.
Okay. Anyway, my point is this, right? That we've seen this story before, right? Distribution has now come up something that's being solved in this dimension. The first wave of games seem primitive, but they're really the evolution of the space and onboarding, meaning the hundreds of millions of users, which is then bleed into the rest of the ecosystem, right? So I think that's what TON is really helping build.
Would you
I
say
think the resilience in the price comes from the fact that it's building these incredible utility network events?
Would you say that TON is one of your top 10 highest conviction bets in the cycle? I know it's a big question, but
it is.
Fantastic.
And look, if you look at our press releases, if you look at us talking about TON, if you look at me talking about TON, you can see we've been very bullish about this. We're encouraging everyone to use those network effects, right? If you want to build a game and you want to have 5, 10, 20 million users on it, tell me a better way to do it.
Got it. 𝗓𝗧, what do you think of? You're a hardcore fucking gamer. You can spend 25 hours on playing one game and not getting up of your gaming chair. What do you make of all these ridiculous games people are playing on Telegram?
Yeah, as much as I would love to see, the Call of Duties of the world thrive in Web3, right now, like what Yacht just said, the simple experiences have actually been the ones that have won time after time. And honestly, I think that the TON stuff is one of the best distribution methods that we've seen, because a few weeks ago, Citus Heroes, which is a last cycle game, they released a experience on TON, and they had 50,000 users within 48 hours. You just don't see that in Web3 gaming very often. And what I'm bullish on is if games can utilize building on TON and the people actually vibe with the game or vibe with what they're doing inside of that ecosystem, they might just go find out a little more about what is Citus or what is the game that's building on TON. So it's almost like a bridge mechanism too, that if they like your experience on Telegram because it's so simplistic, they might go dig deeper, like what other games do the developers of Call of Duty or Valorant, what other games are under their umbrellas of Epic Games and Riot Games? It's kind of like the same thing. So I feel like it's a great onboarding mechanism. It's great for metrics and users, but it could just simply bring them into your broader ecosystem of products. So if you have a simple product on Telegram, but you have a much deeper, immersive, maybe AAA experience, mobile game on an application, they might actually kind of gateway into that because of the experience that they have on Telegram. And I would agree with Yacht. I think it's one of my top 5 to 10 conviction bets this cycle, as well as Not, which is kind of the gaming coin of the TON ecosystem.
So look, top secret, we're building a game on TON at the moment. It's top secret. We haven't told anyone. I'll tell you guys because I'm just so excited about it. It's a voting game. It's for Americans. It's just got Biden, Trump, Kamala Harris, and all you need to do is just tap to vote, and the voting closes on the night of the elections. That's the game. And at the end of it, we're going to release the tokens. But we just thought that we just wanted to find something simple, and we just think it's going to be a nice tool for frustration. So I think like when people get frustrated, they're just going to tap Trump, or Biden, or Kamala Harris, and it's the vote before the vote. And it's one of the most exciting projects that we've kept top secret until now, because I just think the simplicity and the distribution combined is what makes it amazing. Tyler, literally 1 minute. Are you as excited? We have 1 minute left. Are you as excited about Ton as these guys are?
Yeah, 100%. Like we're actually like confidentially, we're working very closely with Ton, between Mocaverse and Ton, and also the ecosystem. And if you think about it, what 𝗏𝗧𝗔𝗬 just talked about, like you got all these users playing different games on like within different mini apps on Telegram. What is the element that is able to cross-pollinate the same users app after app, right? The main thing is really digital identity, reputation, points, and account system. And imagine you can carry your reputation within one mini app, and you can bring it to another app, and another app actually recognize that and actually provide value to you. So this is why we're very bullish on Ton, and also very bullish on network of networks, right? And this is essentially what we're building.
I'm also, I must say, I was skeptical about, I'm always skeptical about tokens. And I was skeptical about Mocaverse, as I'm always. So don't take it personally. I always walk in with skeptically, but I see the power of what you're building, and I think the whole element of a mobilization network across an economy, and it's almost like you're saying to people, listen, we own everything in the economy, and if you participate in everything of the economy, you're going to build your value, and go ahead and just build your fucking value. I think that it's a stroke of genius. Guys, as usual, wow, overtime and heart racing, and just a brilliant way to finish the week. So much love to you guys. Thank you, Yat. Tyler, good to meet you. You'll definitely be back here. Hustle, my brother, good to see you. Good to see you in a red shirt. Good to see you in a Ferrari shirt. Look forward to another GP with you around the world. I'll see you guys again soon. To you guys on the Banter fam, it's been a rough red week. But as I say, we're here for you every single day, bringing you crypto love and crypto wisdom. And you know what? That's not going to change, because tomorrow I'm here. I'm going to do an options trading show so that you guys can learn how to trade options. Sunday, we carry on with a meme show as usual. Monday, we're back to our regular programming. I will see you guys again tomorrow. Until then, trade well, my friends.